Hey everyone, Noodle here. So remember that video I did a couple of days ago telling you not to buy this summer camp shelter because it's broken? Well, I bought it. To be fair, I bought the whole summer camping bundle, which freakishly is only barely more expensive than just the shelter alone and has a ton more stuff in it. If you're gonna get the shelter, get the bundle. The shelter is still busted, but only partially. We'll talk about that later. In the end, I was able to build in it. What we're going to do in this video is build out a beautiful summer camp the regular old-fashioned way on the surface, and then we'll build one in the shelter and see what works, what doesn't, what are the benefits of each one, what are the drawbacks, and hopefully this visual demo will help you decide how you want to set up your camp with your priorities in mind. Because, spoiler alert, neither of these two options gives you everything. You gotta pick and choose or set up both like I did. The summer camp shelter is an absolutely gorgeous big open space that's perfectly laid out and landscaped for a campground. And when I say big, that's an understatement. You won't realize just how much real estate this is until you start building in it. And actually until you start building up top and realize just how little space we're given to work with in a regular camp. The shelter campground is ready to drop and play. What we need to find is a comparable location on the map to build a real camp. There are many places on the map that will work beautifully, like this little lake just north of the lumberyard in the forest. But I went with this spot right here. I like this one because you can't see any other structures, and it truly feels like you're out in the wilderness. It's pretty laid back in terms of enemies, and the trees here are actually identical to what we have down in the shelter. The main problem with claiming a lake, even a tiny lake, is that you can't put your camp module in water. So you can never claim a full lake with its entire bank perimeter. The best you can do is place the module on the protruding rock as close to the water as possible and try to claim part of the lake and the most interesting part of the land. But you see how tiny this circle is compared to the ginormous camp we have down below. So right away, we can't even compare apples to apples because the spaces we have to work with are completely different. We'll definitely have space limitations here and some terrain limitations as well. Remember that after you place your camp module and claim this piece of land, you can move the module out of the way and out of sight. I'm gonna hide mine in the trees right here. Down in the shelter, we don't even have to worry about this at all, of course. I'm also going to immediately place a couple of turrets here because enemies like to spawn near camp modules. Down in the shelter, we don't have to worry about enemies, so we don't need to put up unsightly turrets at all. The very first thing I will place is the entrance to the shelter itself. It comes in this really cool school bus form. So really, the main reason for this camp is to have the shelter entrance. Here's something trippy. Down in the shelter, you can place another shelter entrance and have a shelter within a shelter. And a shelter within that shelter. Shelterception. Since we're down here in the shelter, let's talk about that massive glitch that almost had me pass on this purchase. Honestly, I only bought it so I can make this video. This is for you guys. The glitch is that you can't build structures in free cam mode, which for some is a big deal and for others isn't a problem at all. If you're serious about building, this will drive you crazy. If you're not Moonlight Cowboy or Silver Bunny and just want to scatter some tents around and call it a day, you won't care. Me, I was pretty set back by it. It disrupted my regular workflow. You can place structures in regular mode and then pop out into free cam and move that object around. But you have to do that for every single object. It's a horrible waste of time. And after a while, it's just not fun anymore. But I pushed through and managed to set up this log cabin building with all the trees around it and a small campground with dogs and plants and boats. Very cute. From what we saw in the comments on that last video, the glitch is different for everyone. Not really sure how that works. It's gotta be console related. Most people agree that they can't build here in free cam mode. Some people can't build here at all. and a very small number of people report that they have no issues whatsoever, everything works perfectly fine. I was greatly amused by some of your comments that said that I should be grateful that I got a shelter at all, and not cry about not having free camp mode. Really? Really? This is a 1500 atom item, part of a 2000 atom bundle. It wasn't a free gift. Imagine that you just bought a brand new shiny car. You start driving it home and realize that it only drives 2 miles out in any direction from the dealership, and not an inch further. You take it back and ask for a fix or a refund. And the other customers there shake their heads and say, "Oh my God, don't be such a Karen. You should be grateful you got a car at all." If I pay for something, digital or not, I expect it to work 100% as advertised. And none of you should settle for anything less than 100% either. On that note, I believe that enough tickets have been opened about this, especially after the last video, that we should expect this to get fixed. At some point. The first thing that both of my camps got, up top and down in the shelter, are these docks. Now, I already had the docks set. I don't think it actually comes with the bundle, even though they show a picture of this exact dock as one of the images. It's not actually listed. The items listed are dead shrub, large green pine tree, medium brown pine tree, medium green pine tree, fern, Pioneer Scout's flag, large brown pine tree, tall grass, bush, toxic ivy, equipment shed stash box, which is extremely cool by the way, summer camp shelter, pine tree stumps, and a wake up emote. So I don't think you'll actually get these. Hope you already have them or something like them. Regular floors also work fine as docks. I use them in both camps as well. And they're cool because you can attach stairs to them. Building up top is definitely more difficult with terrain. And of course, the lack of space. I was able to place this tent without anything hovering too obviously, thank God for those bushes. And I was so happy to have all these trees and shrubs to hide the imperfections. And also to make the landscape my own. The trees are amazing and they blend in perfectly. Both upstairs and down, the trees match the other ones perfectly. Get the trees. They come as a separate item. Even if you don't want to buy the rest of this crap, get the trees. The bushes and shrubs are also fantastic. Anyone who's into immersive camps will go crazy for these. They're friendly to plant and can hide any unsightly things that didn't quite line up perfectly. The canoes. The canoes don't actually float. Sorry. Actually, up on the surface, they can't even be placed on water or even on rocks, only on floors and walkways, which makes them a little bit less interesting. Down in the shelter, I can at least put them partially in water, and they look cool. The lobster traps got me excited because they're the first items I've encountered in the game that actually float. But only in the shelter. Up top, I could not place my lobster traps on water, and I am yet to capture a lobster. The main difference between building down in the shelter and up top is the limitation on what you can actually set up. Up top, we can build anything. In our inventory, we have allies, floors, walls, roofs, stairs, doors, crafting, turrets and traps, defenses, generators, power connectors, lights, food, water, resources, appliances, beds, chairs, stash boxes, displays, floor decor, shelves, vendors, tables, wall decor, miscellaneous structures, and shelters. That was all one breath. Down in the shelter, we have only floors, walls, roofs, stairs, doors, crafting, turrets and traps, even though we don't actually need them. Defenses, generators, power connectors, lights, appliances, but not all of them. If they actually produce something, they're not listed. Beds, chairs, stash boxes, displays, floor decor, shelves, vendors, tables, wall decor, miscellaneous structures, and shelters. Down here, we don't get food, water, or anything that produces resources. Nor can we place allies. And it may not be a big deal that you can't grow razor grain in your shelter, even though it looks like giant open farmland. But it does get annoying with things like not being able to place sinks in your otherwise pimped out bathrooms. or place anything that you normally use as decorations just because those things also produce resources. Not being able to actually use this lake for anything other than drinking is another thing. So that's something to consider. For me, this makes shelters purely for play. I like to set up shelters to practice building or for creating structures that I can't create for various reasons up on the surface. But technically, you cannot have a fully functional camp down in the shelter. So if you thought you could just bust out with that bus and call it a day, nope, you cannot. There's more work to do up top. Upstairs is where all the resource collecting will happen. I didn't build out the upstairs to focus on living quarters, but instead I used the space to scatter things like my butterfly sanctuary, my rad stag station, my tree sap collector, beehive, water collector, water purifier, water boiler, my dog collectron, and a bunch of other stuff. One other big difference between camps and shelters is that shelters have no days and nights, no weather, and usually no way to control the lighting at all. Some shelters come with additional light sources, but they all have built-in lighting that you can't control. This shelter displays a clear day all the time. Some of you will love this. Some of you will hate it. It is what it is. It will never rain down here. You will never see a starry night. And none of the lanterns or fire pits will ever look cozy and campy. Because it's always daytime, like in a Vegas casino. Size-wise, I actually found this shelter to be way too big. I spent all day building here in my gimpy non-free cam mode, and I only built out this little corner, and honestly, at this point, I'm kinda over it. I really don't care about filling up the rest of the space with more camping stuff. I could come up here and decorate this nice cabin, and then what? Put up 60 more cabins and decorate them? Up top, on the other hand, the space is tight, and I had to finesse my way around to get everything to fit just right. Sometimes, tiny and tight is better than huge and wide open. I had a lot of fun building here. For me, the space and terrain limitations actually made the process more interesting. It was like putting a puzzle together. So consider your building style and why you build to begin with. Some build for the pleasure of the process. Some build to create practical creations. You may need the buttload of space for your massive enclave dungeon or your medieval castle. But if you're looking to set up a cute little realistic campground, I think the old-fashioned way is actually the better way to go. We built 2 camps today. One up on the surface with limited space and terrain complications, but with no limitations on resources or appliances. And one down in the shelter with an obviously huge piece of land that comes with some limitations, like the lack of weather and lighting variability, and a limit on the types of things you can set up. One will get permanently attacked and will need defenses and repairs, and the other is 100% safe and secure. Which one's better? For me, I'm actually going to keep this little campground and swap out the shelter for something that makes more thematic sense, like an actual small fallout shelter room or a cave. Because cool as it is, it doesn't actually make any sense that we would have a shelter that has trees and a sky. I mean, they kind of covered that in Fallout the show, but this doesn't look like a set. It actually looks like land and sky. I'd love to know and see what you end up doing. Please share your stories and pictures over at Vault 42. That's our Discord server. If you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, toss me a super chat to help me pay for that shelter I'm about to throw away, and consider becoming a channel member or a patron. We really appreciate everyone's help, and you can see that it has us making more awesome content every week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Noodle Pants, one half of Game Aviator. And until next time, stay safe out there, camp builders. In the heart of
West Virginia, where the shadows creep and sway, lies a land of rusted dreams, where the brave dare not stray. Appalachia, oh, it's a treacherous ride, with dangers untold and no